hello, everybody. I have the honor of having Vicki Suiter, the author of The Profit Bleed, with me today. So, Vicki, thank you for joining me today.
Sure. Thanks for asking me to join you.
So, tell me what your book's about. Tell us what your book is about.
So, The Profit Bleed is about where are the landmines for contractors in terms of where profits leak out of your business, and how do you shore those things up? So, the book is based on the body of work that I've done with clients over the last 25 plus years, where I've seen where there's like these key places where profits leak out of your business as a contractor, and how do you shore up those profits, and how do you understand what causes those leaks, and then how to make changes in your business.
By the way, I learned so much about business by working with you for a number of ways, just like the content itself, where the profit, where we bleed profit out of our business, why we get into trouble in the first place, the whole mindset thing, and forgetting our numbers, forgetting to look at numbers. And like a lot of people start businesses and they go with the flow and they get busy and they think, I think the biggest thing that you taught is that people think volume equals business success, but what does volume often equal?
Well, what it equals is a lot more work, but without the right profits built into it. Like the book is written as a story, and it was based on this one particular client who they had decided they were going to sell more in a down economy. And what they ended up doing was lowering their prices so that they would be the best price contractor and win more contracts. But the problem is that they grew so much in volume, and that with a low margin, and then their overhead started to go up. They had gone from making $250,000 a year to losing $500,000 when their revenue had more than tripled. And so, it was just such a great example of like, you cannot buy your way into a higher volume with lower margins and have it work out. Like I've seen, it just never works.
I see businesses all the time, and I'm like, oh my God, you don't understand that there's a big problem in your business. So tell me how, you talked about a composite character. You told stories about your clients, and rather than choosing individual clients, which, has its own problems associated with it, you created a composite character. How did having a composite character to tell your story, to walk your readers through the process of what it is that you help people do, how did having a composite character make it easy for you as a writer?
It made it easier because I like to read books that way, first of all, because it makes it more relatable, and stories are really powerful. It made it easier in that all I had to do was to remember that situation or that event and like what happened, and to be able to, rather than have it sort of be this flat information on the page, bring those people into the story, and remembering, the struggles, the challenges, the wins, the successes, like being able to remember and step into what that experience was like working with them, made it easier to actually write the book, because it wasn't just this conceptual thing of, I know these things, but when I could bring in like, here's what I did, and here's what the challenge was, and here's how they worked through it, it just made it so much easier, because I wasn't. Yeah. And I think it made it more relatable too.
I loved it. I loved working on that too, because I think stories drive the framework. Stories drive, it brings the reader along, and we can be in that moment, and then we're grounded in that face, and we can learn the information.
So can I just say I want to say one other thing about story, because I don't like writing story. For me, is not generally very easy. Like even just in my blog writing or in marketing writing, I find that it's challenging sometimes, because there's like this whole framework around how stories are told and so on and so forth. So I'm going to say that writing the book from the perspective of a real life example, and then having your feedback really helped, because you would ask me questions about, so tell me a little bit more about like, what were they thinking, or what made you decide that you should tell them that? That you really helped me become a better storyteller in that process. Because I just think most of us don't like wake up one day and we're like, I can tell a story.
Yeah, and telling a story and writing a story are two different things. So, that's another challenge that people have. Yeah. One of the challenges that I think that you brought to the table is what a lot of people I work with face is you have massive amounts of knowledge. You've been in the industry, you've worked, with people in this capacity for a long time. You could fill 10 books with everything you know. So the challenge is, how do you create a container that doesn't overwhelm people? How do you not cram all of your knowledge in that? Tell me how having too much knowledge can be a curse for someone who is trying to write a book.
Well, I had been working on writing that book before I met you for 5 years, and I had a lot of false starts in that process. And here's what I would say is it's that I had to figure out what was the most important message that I wanted to say, and what was a way that I could say it in a way that people could consume it and hear it, right? Which is where the story part came in. But also, I realized that if I could stay really focused on what was the most critical things that I wanted to say in the book, like with that one element, like there's a whole other book in me to be written about managing people. This was about managing and having more clarity about the results in your business and how to keep your finger on the pulse of those critical elements that drive your success. So I didn't try to, I think the thing that really helped was to realize that I wasn't going to be able to tell people everything, right? You can't in a book and actually have anybody read it. So you have to choose. I had to choose what were the most critical things that I saw were the driving elements for a contractor or a business owner that were going to support their success, and have enough detail that they could like go do something with it, but not so much detail that they were like, oh, like I'm completely overwhelmed. I don't even know where to begin. So what I tried to do is to stick to those most critical pieces and do a little bit of a deep dive into it, but not so much, like I said, that overwhelmed people.
I loved the bonus stack that you created, because one of the benefits of having all of that information and being able to go deeper is saving some of that for a bonus. So it doesn't clog up the book itself, doesn't clog up the pages, but is more information for the people who want more. I'm curious what having that bonus stack associated with your book did for you, if anything.
It did a number of things. It helped me build my list. So there's a certain, of those people who buy the book on Amazon, they're not on my mailing list. And so I have a lot of resources that are, that says, hey, go here and you can download this resource. It helped build my list. The other thing that it did is that, and I know you're going to talk about strategy, about my sales strategy for selling the book, but when it came to that, I was also able to package up all of those resources and have it be an upsell.
I love that. I love strategy. That's like my favorite part of a book, besides the structure of a book. So we're going to get to that, because I think you do an amazing job selling your books continuously. We published your book several years back, and every
2018.
Yeah, 2018, and you still consistently sell month after month after month. So I want to get to that, because you've got a lot of ideas. So the big question is, you've been in the business a long time. What made you decide to first start a book, and then kind of knock it off and get professional help to finish this book idea?
I wish I could, it called to me, honestly. I just felt like this was something that I really needed to do. I wanted, and I guess the thing for me really was, I knew I wanted to be able to serve and support more people. My business was at that time structured where I was doing all my work was one-on-one. I've now got a group that I work with, but there's a limited number of people that I can work with at any one time. And I've seen the struggle in the industry for so many years. And I really wanted to be able to make a contribution and help people who maybe they're not ready to work with me, or they're not ready to do my program, or they just are out there going, I need help. I wanted to be able to offer that. And yeah, so that was what called me to do it. What brought me to working with you was, like I said, I'd had like 5 years of false starts. I had worked with a couple of other writing coaches prior to that, which were people who served to overwhelm me in many ways. And I'd bought software and done online courses. I mean, like I had worked with the system for a while before we met. And the thing that first attracted me to working with you was I read your stuff and I was like, I love how she writes. And I knew that I wanted to write this book as a story, and your writing really resonated with me. So that was the first thing that had me contact you. And the thing that was the difference in working with you than working with somebody else is, and this is interesting because there's a way that people coach people. And one way that people coach people is, I call it consulting because it's not really coaching, is when they tell them just like, what's the next thing to do? What's the next thing to do? And then they drive them down into these little like minutia of stuff. And we sometimes can get lost in lose sight of the bigger picture. The thing about working with you is that, and this is what I say that I do with people all the time, is like, lift up your head, look out, where are you going? Like, what's the next thing? What's the most important thing? So like when I would start getting stuck in the minutia, you would lift my head up and go, all right, what are you trying to say here? What's the point you're trying to make? What's the message you want to deliver? Like you would just ask me more and more questions. And that really, and as a business coach, and what I know is that that's one of the greatest gifts that we can give somebody else is asking them questions so that they have a greater sense of clarity, so that they have more confidence, so they can take more powerful actions. And that's exactly what you do. That's your approach, is to ask a lot of questions. So, I mean, you're an amazing editor too. And like, what about this and what about that? But more importantly, like, I felt like I wrote the book and you helped me be a better writer and think more clearly in the process, which had me be more confident about what I was actually writing about.
Oh, I love hearing that, because I pride myself on being big picture and understanding strategy. So I'm glad that comes off. And I always think of, we need the touchstone. Like, where are we driving? What's the touchstone? What's the touchstone? Everything has to come back to the touchstone, which I think a lot of people forget. So thank you for that. I love hearing that.
Thank you. You were amazing to work with. I really, that book would not have gotten written had I not met you and done that piece of work.
I'm so glad. And I do think one of the things that I saw when you first started is you were at a place where not only did you want to impact more people, you needed to scale. And I think that's like key. It's a point that I don't want to run past, is when you recognize, and you said it, like, I'm not after more one-on-one clients. I am full up on that. I am looking to expand my business and be able to offer people other things other than my one-on-one time. And I think knowing that that's what you were after helped with that touch point. Like, where are we going? If you don't want one-on-one clients, what are we doing here? And how has it allowed you to scale? How are you using the book right now? How does it feed into your, let's say, your offerings as a business person?
So there's a lot of, so one of the strategies, it's going to mean I'm going to talk about marketing strategy. You okay with that?
I
Okay.
love that. Yeah.
So one of the strategies that in working with you, and then in getting coaching from other people who are book marketers, I came up with this plan of, all right, so what I'm going to do is there's all these things that I give to people for free. And how can I have people actually buy the book and then from me directly, and then offer that as a way to be able to get people into my world and more engaged. But also then, as I was saying, I did an upsell of all those resources. So how I look at it is I give people free stuff, and then there is an offer that I make, and I open this up probably once a quarter. Like I'm in the middle of this right now in my blog posts, in my emails, and I say, hey, if you're interested in growing your business and having, increasing your profitability, having more time in your day, then I encourage you to check out my book, The Profit Bleed: How Managing Margin Can Save Your Contracting Business. You can get it for free for just $9.95 shipping and handling. So people go on, they get the book, and then at the end of on the sales page, it says, hey, wait a minute, are you interested? There's all sorts of resources available to you in the book, but you can get them all in one place where they're there for you and they're accessible, and you could share it with your team and so on and so forth. Would you like to be able to get that? And then that's an upsell of $37.95, $39.95, something like that. And then the people, then there's a whole sequence that they go through based on that they've come into, that they've now become part of a purchaser of a book and the resource kit. Then they go into, then there's at some point, like if that helped you and you were interested in that, you might be interested in this other resource I have, or this resource, or my membership group. So what it does is it just allows people to have an experience, get some real life tools that they can use, and and then move on to like the next thing. But it's a small price. Those are two very small price items that they move from a free to something that they pay for.
I love that. That's a beautiful, beautiful funnel. So an entry into your other offerings, and you do it in a number of ways, and you're brilliant at this. So as a publisher, I don't see those sales, but I will every single quarter when I'm filling out my royalty checks, which I love sending you. I'll go in.
I like getting them too.
I know. Aren't they fun? I go in and I look at, when things have sold for the Profit Bleed, and I can look at a given date and I said, you know what? I don't know what Vicki is up to, but she did something on this day, or she did something on that day, because suddenly there's 10 books that have been sold, 20 books that have been sold. What are you doing? Why are you getting so many consistent sales that I see? Not the ones that you sell off your website, but the ones that I see off Amazon. What are you doing?
There's a couple of things. So speaking is huge. Speaking always generates book sales. And I mean speaking, whether I'm doing a live event, a webinar, I'm a guest on somebody's podcast. So podcast guest speaking for a while was a really big strategy of mine in terms of building my list and building my program, some of my programs. And it continues to be like that. I have partners that I joint venture with who, people say, and she's the author of The Profit Bleed. So when the book first came out, those interviews were specifically around, hey, she just came out with this amazing book and so on and so forth. Now those interviews are about other things, whether it's, teams or whatever, different topics specific to the construction industry. People will read my bio, and so oftentimes I think that's how it happens. It's some speaking event, either, like I said, podcast, webinar that I'm doing through a national association, or from live speaking engagements.
Yeah, you're out in the world and
Yeah.
you let people know that you're the author of this book. And that's one of those things that a lot of people, I'll call them civilians, and I don't deal with a lot of civilians who don't have an online aspect to their business, but those people who don't have an online aspect to their business, they still operate under, I've written a great book and it's published, so people are going to come and find the book, and they're generally sorely disappointed. But
yeah, books are not any different than building a business. Like if you like, I remember probably it's got to be 20 years ago now, maybe, when I remember I don't know what I was doing or what I'd read or what course I was taking, but it was some epiphany moment where I was like, oh, I am the best kept secret ever. Like, what is it that I think that magically, because I do great work, that people are going to know who I am, or I write these blog posts or articles that people are going to know and they're going to flock to me. And the light bulb went on for me at that point. And I was like, oh, girl, you need to get out there and find a way to connect with people. And I have to tell you, it's been, I'm sure, that many years, and I'm always learning. I always am learning new ways to think about and embrace even just social presence, right? Like the whole thing of, should I do Facebook ads? Should I be on LinkedIn? Should I be Instagram? Do I do blogs? Like, how do I grow my list? Like, there's just, there's a lot of moving elements. And I will say though, for me, building an identity in the marketplace, whether it's for consulting, coaching, book sales, courses, other offerings, a lot of it has come from just getting out there and marketing myself but through speaking. And I don't hawk my wares when I'm on a stage, and especially at this point, because I get paid for it. But when people introduce me, that's the last thing they say. And she's the author of the book, The Profit Bleed. So, but part of it is it just getting out there and letting people know that you're out there, who you are, what sets you apart from the competition, how you can serve people, what's the problem that you solve. And so when I got clear about that, it really made a difference. And then I started surrounding myself by people who knew more about that and who could help me understand how to put myself out there in a way that wasn't just like a shotgun approach, right?
Yeah.
But was more strategic, because the shotgun approach is exhausting and usually not very effective. And how do I know that? Because I tried it.
I know. All right. So the first time I met you, you were on stage and you'd paid for the opportunity to be workshopped in front of a group of people. And I remember sitting there thinking, number one, wow, she paid good money for this opportunity. Number two, I was intimidated by you because you were somebody who took yourself and your business seriously. And it went back to this epiphany moment for me. And these come in multiple places, but I think you standing on that stage, having invested in your self-growth and your business growth, was a really key reminder that we have to invest in ourselves if we want people to invest with us. And I remember the first time I heard that, I thought it was such a crock of crap, because I thought to myself, yeah, sure, this is a salesperson who wants my money, and they're going to say that. And over the years, I've learned that it is the God's honest truth that if you are not willing to invest in your growth and in your business, people don't invest in you and you don't grow. Tell me what you make of that.
I have not heard that in that way, but I would, as I'm listening to you, I'm like, I completely agree. It doesn't happen there's no magic out there, right? So if you don't invest in what it is that you want to go after, we don't wake up one day, we don't come to hang our shingle as a business owner and go, I'm an expert, I know everything. There is so much to learn. And the more we Here's how, I guess, how I think about it in this. So I appreciate really what you said, but part of it is the more clarity we have, the more confidence we have to take more powerful actions, to have more courage, to be putting ourselves out there more. And that only comes from learning and growing and investing in ourselves, as you're talking about. It's like when the book came out, I was like, all right, great. Like I knew enough from studying about putting a book out there that it wasn't going to sell off the shelves, and that Barnes and Noble wasn't going to call me and go, we want to put you on the end cap. We hear you're writing a book. Matter of fact, Barnes and Noble wouldn't even talk to me about putting my book in Barnes and Noble, much less put me on an end cap. And it's very discouraging as an author initially, because you're like, oh, like, do I have is somebody gonna sell for me? It would be really great if they did, be a lot easier, but truthfully, they couldn't do as good a job as we can as authors. And so that whole thing of, it's building muscle memory and about all sorts of different things, but it's also just about like when we have more clarity, when we're investing in ourselves, when we're spending that time and energy and money in learning and getting better at what we do, then we have more clarity, and that clarity, like I said, gives us more confidence to be more courageous, take more powerful actions. And ultimately, like, why does anybody do any of it is, there's some life that we have desired to have, right? There's some life of being able to have choice about how we spend our time, do what we love, be independently, financially healthy. And, not everybody wants to be bloody rich, but we all want to be able to have a comfortable lifestyle, to have choices about how we spend our money. Some people want to be like filthy rich. You're not going to you don't wake up one day knowing how to do that when you hang your shingle as a business owner. It takes time.
Do you remember like when we were growing up? Because you and I are not that far apart in age. I think you're only like a month older than me.
I'm a few years older.
Yeah. But do you remember that there was that idea of being discovered sitting at the soda fountain? There was like some actress who got discovered and brought into movies because somebody had discovered her, sitting at a soda fountain. Maybe it was like Lana Turner. And I find
that's the problem. We've been living in this illusion all these years.
That somebody's gonna discover us. And I was talking to one of my, a writer, and this writer was saying this stuff should happen organically. I shouldn't have to, pay for ads, or I shouldn't have to pay for distribution, or I shouldn't have to, like, the book should be so good that it sells itself, that it happens organically. And it's this cognitive dissonance that it's so hard to break through. It's like, it's not Lana Turner at the soda fountain, this fantasy.
And it's not 50 years ago when your form of information came from newspapers and 3 TV channels that actually reported news and not direct.
Yeah. Anyway, any other words of wisdom for somebody who's sitting on all of this knowledge and thinks that they want to write a book and is hearing this, it's not sitting on a soda fountain, and it means that I'm going to have to put myself out there? And what would you leave them with as a call to action, since you're so good at calls to action?
I would leave them with this, that what you have to say is going to make a difference in somebody's life. And playing small doesn't serve you, and it doesn't serve the purpose for which you actually want to write a book, which is to make a difference in people's lives. And when you are not willing to do it, you're robbing people of the opportunity to have the life they desire, or to have a greater sense of joy or happiness, or whatever it is that you're writing a book about. And let that be your guiding post. Let it be that you just remember that there are some buddies and souls in the world who really want to be touched, moved, and inspired by what it is that you have to say.
Vicki Suiter, the author of The Profit Lead, thank you for joining us today.